I think that's more complaining about what the movie's not, as opposed to complaining about what it is. So I don't find that to be a deal breaker. What about you guys? What do you think about that?
No, I think if he would have read the lines that George Hamilton had, I think if he would have been in it, it would have been a great completion, you could say, to the family, to having the callbacks or to having the gang back together, to sing the song kind of thing. But really with the parts that George Hamilton had, there was no use for him. I think, if Robert Duvall was in there, he would have probably had a few more lines, but
well, they definitely would have expanded his role if it were Robert Duvall. But you're right. I mean, that just shows you the function of the Tom Hagen character has always been very just keeping the wheels of the business rolling, right? There wasn't really much, there's not a lot of interesting angles there. Like I mentioned in our last conversation, it was the most interesting thing about him was when they mentioned, you take your wife and your mistress, and you're like, oh, whoa, okay, where did that come from? I thought he was the square guy just doing business. Now, he has an interesting story being this, German, Italian guy brought it in by this, German, English, Irish guy, excuse me. Yeah. I have the same. I am also English, Irish, German, and Scottish, so I have the same ethnicities as Tom Hagen, right? So it's interesting that he got brought in the Sicilian family and this culture and all that. That is what his claim to fame as a character is. But beyond that, there's really not much to him. Now, if they had written more to him for 3 and made him like Michael, number one adversary, them going back and forth, they wouldn't have to have these other characters oh, hey, I was friends with your father when I was a kid, right? I mean, that's fine, but it is kind of retcon because who are these people? We've never seen them before. But I do think it was effective because the Eli Wallach character, I mean, he looks like this kind of friendly old man, right? But he's the mastermind bad guy behind all this stuff, and they kind of do that from Godfather 2 as well with the guy in Cuba. So they're kind of pulling the same story threads, but
Lee Strasberg, I
Yeah.
saw that. I saw a lot of similarities between just the character and physicality of Eli Wallach versus Lee Strasberg. Watching this movie, I thought they were deadpan identical.
Now, I speaking of that, I think the speaking of Star Trek Voyager again, right? The scene was so good they reused it in Brandon's favorite episode ever, Alliances. But the you know what I'm talking about,
Yes,
Brandon?
pretty much. Yes, I do. I absolutely thought of Alliances when I watched the scene. I'm like, boy, Voyager just ripped this off of Godfather 3, didn't they?
That is, but the Atlantic City helicopter shootout.
Yes.
I mean that's an amazing set piece, right?
That is Star Trek in the Darkness mafia style. That's basically what that is.
Star Trek everywhere in this movie, but really though, I mean that's a really intense, hardcore way to do it, and something we haven't seen that before.
And it's true. It's true. Again, times change. They would come by in the Model T Fords back in Godfather 1 for whatever. Now they're flying Hueys and and Helos and going after what they're going after.
Yeah, to answer your question earlier there, though, Zach, no, I didn't miss Robert Duvall in this. It would have been nice to see him, but I don't know. I thought it makes sense. People die. People get old and die. And this is another, 15 years later after The Godfather Part II, I believe. This is 1979, that this takes place in. And when did Godfather 2 end? Was it
55?
55, yeah.
So
55? So, yeah, something like that. 15
So
years later,
25,
right?
yeah.
So,
it's 25 or more, Brandon. Math.
I've got 3 glasses of Bailey's in me here, man. I don't know what 2 + 2 is right now. So, but yeah, I don't know. I thought it was okay. So, I don't know. I love this movie. I think this movie's really good. And, I like the symmetry of Michael's son not wanting to be in the family and going off to do his own thing, and, Mike's got the good advice to tell him, look, finish your law degree and then do whatever you want.
That is good advice.
It is good advice, right? It's really good advice. But the guy goes and does his own thing. And I think it's interesting when you think singer, I've seen this movie a few times, but I'm thinking the cousin there, the whatever his name is, Johnny, whatever.
Like a man.
Yeah.
Right, that guy, right? So I'm picturing that kind of singing, but he wants to be an opera singer, and I'm like, okay, that's neat, and it brings him back to Italy, and it gets us
ultimately
a chance to
gets
go
his
back to
sister
Italy.
killed. Thanks a lot, Anthony.
I don't blame the brother for that.
Right.
So.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
No. Okay, so I mean, the intricacies of this is fascinating, and again, much like Godfather 2. and you know the original Godfather, talking about the mafia, right? But Godfather 2 specifically, at least in my mind, ties into the rise of Cuba, Fidel Castro, right? This one kind of builds its story around the 30-day Pope, Pope John Paul I. Very interesting story about money laundering in the Vatican. Like, guys, go look it up in history. It's a fascinating story. And so they kind of do a little bit of historical fiction with all this behind the scenes, what's really going on at the Catholic Church. And
fiction.
Yeah, well, they fictionalize historical accounts. Yeah, okay, but that's kind of a reveal too, because when the priest or the cardinal, excuse me, I forget his exact title at the time, that Michael confesses to, right, in the garden and all that, you're like, this seems like a really good guy, like, you know, and then he becomes the Pope. It's like, what will you be known as? John Paul the First. You're like, oh, you know, that's a nice reveal there, and you see where they're going, and yeah.
Nice little God complex, to forgive the pun. That's how I took
very
it.
good, very good. But yeah, I mean, no, I agree with you, Brandon. There is a lot of great stuff in this movie, which to me makes the things that don't live up just even more frustrating. And we got to talk about it. You joked about at the beginning, you know, the incest factor. Why is that here? Why did they think that was a good idea?
Isn't this what Italians do?
No.
Okay.
No.
Wow.
No.
Chris, you tell me.
I'm telling you, no. That's what I'm telling you. I'm leaving it at that. No. And it's the first thing
all I know about Italians is Godfather 3.
I didn't even press play on the DVD, and the first note I have is kissing cousins. That's the only thing I remember about this whole movie before I watched it in depth.
They're half cousins.
Oh, it don't matter.
No, they're first cousins.
It
so
doesn't
I left
matter.
him first. Like Michael. Man, he's so right. Michael even has Anthony on his side about it. He's like, he's right. It's like, seriously. That's what's interesting, because the movie starts out, Anthony wants nothing to do with his dad, right? And then they kind of come around, and they are a little kind of closer near the end than Mary has been, because she starts to rebel against them by getting with Vincent. And Michael's like, it's wrong. They're cousins. And I agree. Like, are we supposed to root for this weird incestual relationship? I don't even know. Like, they know each other because they were at a wedding and he was 15 and she was 8, and they meet again at this party, and then they just, I don't know. Like, I don't, why would you even go there?
No.
It's so bizarre.
I don't know. Like, I don't expect.
Defend that, Brandon.
I don't know I can't defend it, but I'm like, I don't know. It's not. I don't know. I had a crush on a couple of my cousins, but I didn't like do anything with them. I don't know. Like
tell me your sins. Tell me your sins, my son.
Tell me your sins. I didn't date any of my cousins. I didn't sleep with any of my cousins or anything like that. But I don't know. But I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, the combination between it being an incestual relationship and Sofia Coppola's awful acting makes me completely disconnected from any of this love story they try to plug in here. Like, why didn't Sonny stay with his... Or Sonny. See, look, he was so great. I think he's his dad. Why didn't Vincent stay with his reporter girlfriend he hooked up with at the beginning? I guess she got kind of freaked out because she almost got killed the first night.
He was going to let her... Yeah, exactly. She took off.
How's that for a first date? So how'd you like dinner? It was great. Fantastic. How'd you like staying over? It was great. Fantastic. All up until I had a knife pulled up in my throat, and, you know...
He wasn't going to let her get killed, okay?
She didn't know that.
Anyway... But that's why I'm saying, like, why
did
the
guy's brains get blown out in front of her?
Bridget Fonda should have been
a
married.
day in the
been
life.
So much happier.
It's a day in the life. That's all it is. But
did y'all did y'all think? What did y'all think of Kay and Michael in this movie? I think it was a good examination of the aftermath of their relationship in the previous two, because a lot of years had passed. You could tell, obviously, they had been in love, they had had children, right? They still loved each other on some level, but I feel like it was a good examination of, like, how do two people interact, you know, all these years later with all this water under the bridge, you know?
Brandon, I'll let you go first.
I think it was interesting because, you know, she's clearly still very angry towards him. She's moved on with her life. He hasn't. She's married again. He hasn't. You know, like, she's got a life and she's made a good life for herself. And, you know, so she's kind of forced into a situation with him because of her son's decisions, you know, going on this trip to Italy and whatnot. And as much as he, again, sits there and tries to tell her, look, I'm a different person, bang, he's right back in the thick of things in another country, you know. And I think it's really interesting because that calls back, with her looking in, calls back to the first movie, you know. And she even is like, kind of like rolls her eyes and is like, it's just never going to end, you know. So I like it because you can tell that she still loves him, but she just doesn't love the life.
She loves
Yeah.
the individual. She doesn't love the environment around the individual. And as what I thought the same thing. I thought it was, she continues to still want nothing to do with the family after knowing what the family's all about now, after all these years trying to become legitimate. Who knows when it happened. It probably happened, I would say 25 years had passed since two, so we'll go with half. And we'll say 12 years later, probably she finally got fed up. But the fact that Michael knows that Kay is the one true love, the one he can always come to outside of being Catholic and trusting God, that he knows that he can tell her anything. But what Kay doesn't know is that everything he tells me a lie. Mm-hmm. And it becomes that vicious circle. And it's a lot, seeing them as divorced and sitting across the table from one another in that one scene. It's kind of not your typical divorced couple, Mm-hmm. It's for circumstances outside of irreconcilable differences or a higher level thereof, or another level thereof, to be honest. But it's interesting to see that, Michael can always will tell her that I love you, but Kay will say it back, but it's such a different meaning, like you said, Brandon. It's the individual, not the life that's been led.
Yeah.
And I like that scene too, like because you mentioned God and how that relates, and yeah, he has his forgiveness from God, right? But he's looking for something more close to home as well, right? Something tangible, like something God with skin on, right? Is what people are looking for, right? So yeah, you can see why he'd seek out the forgiveness of not just the intangible supernatural, but like the true people that have been in my life who I've offended. I need that forgiveness, and how do you think? How do you think the relationship was after the daughter died? I mean, that was the ultimate fear of both of them, right? And that's right in front of their faces. And so you can only imagine how it. I mean, all the progress in this movie completely snapped back to even worse than before, I would imagine, after the death of Mary, right?
Yes, like there's no reconciliation. Like she would have been so angry at him forever, after that happened, and like it's his fault because of the career that he's in. That what he's chosen. He didn't want this. She was, what's the shrapnel, I guess is the term. She was shrapnel in the situation, but like what a heart-wrenching ending. Like when you listen to the commentary in that first scream when he's quiet, like they took the audio out. So that wasn't a choice of Pacino's. That was a choice of like the editing and the director and the sound design afterwards. And I think that's so effective that he has that first scream and there's nothing. And it's just like he's got nothing to give. And then he gives that heart-wrenching scream. I think that adds to it so much rather than having like a whole bunch of screaming in a row. Having that quiet that first time is what really drives it over the top. And I don't know, that scene rips my heart out. Like, I don't know, because I love Al Pacino as an actor. And, we've invested so much with Michael Corleone as a character that, you could tell his love for his family. You can see that all he wants is his family. But I mean, again, like this is different than his father. Like his father lost a son. Like his father lost a son from gun violence, like from a hit. Right? It was a directed hit, not a shrapnel hit. Right? But he's the same boat as his father, and I believe they handled it in different ways. Like that's what killed Michael Corleone. I believe that was his decline, and he just couldn't recuperate from that at all. And that's what led him to die in loneliness. Was the heartbreaking loss of his daughter. Like, that's how I read that. Where his father, while it was a hit, was like, look, I'm going to choose to not take this personally because it was just business. Yes, I'm heartbroken that I lost Sonny, but we're going to move on and I'm not going to have any repercussions from this. I don't know. That's just how I read it in the grand design of the whole series. And I love it. I think it's great.
It's one of many scenes in cinema for as long as cinema's been around that's notable, especially for this saga. 25 seconds of silence. And I said this before, and couple of weeks, maybe in each of the podcasts, this last two, there's a lot to be said for non-vocal cues. And once you hear the gunshot,